we're entering an election season. There's lots of things on the ballot. We should be thinking about Congress. We should be thinking about local elections. But when we talk about the presidential election, Kamala Harris is on the ticket. Jill Stein's on the ticket. Claudia De La Cruz is on the ticket. Cornel West is on the ticket. And Donald Trump is on the ticket. I'm going to assume everybody watching here who I give a fuck about is not voting for Donald Trump. So I'm not even going to engage that part of it. What do we do? I heard Kamala Harris 3 days ago say, and it troubled me to no end when she talked about Iran being the destabilizing force in the Middle East. She said a million things that are disturbing, but that was like the last thing for me. It's like after watching the last year, to say that Iran is the destabilizing force in the Middle East was wild to me.
Did that surprise you?
Not at all. Not at all. Nothing she does surprise me.
Yeah.
Nothing she does. She has from day one been, and when I say day one, I don't mean running for president. I mean since Attorney General to DA to Attorney General to Senate to. She is. Yeah. Only slightly less, and when I say slightly, I mean it's largely rhetorical. Only slightly less aggressively Zionist than Joe Biden, right? And
I wouldn't even go that far.
Yeah, and I said it might, and I'm saying it might just be rhetorical because he actually says I'm a Zionist and she doesn't. That's the only difference I see. And so for me, and you and I need to talk offline about this at some point. I know you reached out, and I didn't see exact COVID, but I'm struggling with this election. I have no intention of ever endorsing Kamala Harris. That's never on my agenda, right? But the question I've had is, when I watched what Trump did during his time, I watched him cancel the UNRWA funds, not even with the pretext. I watched him, not do the normal punt that all presidents do on the embassy move. I watched him sort of have this bromance with Netanyahu. I genuinely believe, as awful as Biden has been, and I don't think that Biden could have been any worse. I think more Palestinians might die under Trump than under Biden, than under Kamala Harris. This is my premise. That's my pretext, right? That's my premise.
Yeah.
And I also take seriously the need I'm a lifelong Green Party member, to think about what it means to, at the moral level, I don't want to make a vote for genocide. I wouldn't sleep well at night doing that. But I also won't sleep well if I make a vote that I think makes things worse. So I'm struggling with what to do. It's not, do I endorse Kamala or not? It's sort of, and I have my own issues with the Green Party right now, politically, that I've talked about publicly with them. So there's a lot of things on the table for me, but as my audience is watching this, I know a lot of them are equally conflicted. They're like, yo, I can't vote for genocide, but I don't want to vote for Trump. There's the Supreme Court, there's women's reproductive, there's all these other things that would be potentially different. I don't want to be a single issue voter, but I don't want to sell Palestinians out. I don't expect Palestinians to vote anywhere differently. But so these are all the mixed parts that I have, and I'd love you to help me think through this a little
bit. I'm glad we're having this discussion. I wish we had more time for it because I think these are important things that people are grappling with and should talk through. For Palestinians, I think the best we can do at this hour is to register our just dissent by voting for a third party. I am going to vote for Jill Stein because I believe in moments like this that it's a disservice to us, to people everywhere, to vote in a way that caters to this lesser of two evil shackles that we willingly carry. It's a choice. We choose to accept this lesser of two evil logic, and therefore it is. Because if people did not accept it, it would not be a reality. So I reject it, and I choose my morals. I choose my principles, and that's the only way I sleep at night. I don't think Harris is better than Trump on anything. I really don't. And I know there are perceptions out. No, I don't. I mean, and you'll see, if the Democrats get into office, one of the first things, and because there's been rumblings about this, and if you listen, so there was a headline the other day of John Kerry saying, if we can get the Democrats in, there are legal ways to basically curtail the First Amendment to quote unquote prevent disinformation. Wow. And so after you read that headline and then you go back and listen to some of the things that Kamala Harris has been saying and others have been saying, you realize that they're literally starting to condition us to this idea that the First Amendment needs to be modified somehow to accommodate this digital age of where, of fake news, because they are bothered by the fact that ordinary people have access to information that does not go through gatekeepers, the traditional gatekeepers. So that's going to come under the Democrats. There's there's some ways that Trump is even better than Harris, and there's maybe some ways that she's better than him. But on the whole, I don't think either is better than the other. Trump is, he's insane. He's horrible in every way. But he's also someone who did not. He's an isolationist, and he doesn't. He'll stop funding. He'll allow Israel to annex this or that, but he doesn't strike me as someone who even understands the international arena to participate.
That's what scares me. That's what scares me.
But which means that he's not inclined to participate in wars, right?
Unless he brings John Bolton on again, who likes to bomb everything. The thing is, he's a useful idiot for
look, there are
people.
so many factors. There's so many factors, and the truth is, no matter whether it's Harris or, and listen, I think Kamala Harris is a neocon hawk, and it's no accident that Dick Cheney is endorsing her. I mean, that alone should tell you something. That Dick Cheney, of all people, isn't he along with a whole cohort of neocon hawks like him are endorsing Kamala, and it's for a reason. It's not because they just love her, but
yeah.
So, I think we are screwed no matter what. So
right.
Therefore, I choose to vote on principle, and I choose to use this vote with a longer term sort of thought process. I'm not just thinking about this election because there's really nothing we can do. It's one of two devils, and I reject that. I reject the devils. I reject this evil. I reject this. I reject what they're doing to us because
I think I struggle because of the Supreme Court and some of these other things that I think do make a market difference down the road. But I pose this question, maybe it's not a fair question, but if Kamala Harris were different, right? Let's say she said, I'm for an immediate arms embargo, for an immediate no more funding. I'm no longer going to exercise veto power for the Security Council. I'm going to work toward a Palestinian state that the Palestinian civil society supports. Let's say she had as good a position on Palestine as any Democrat could have, but she had the same reprehensible position on Congo and Haiti and Yemen and Saudi.
Mm-hmm.
Would you vote for her?
First of all, that's a hypothetical that would never exist because people who would hold that, Congo is not disconnected from Palestine, is not disconnected from Yemen. So that's we don't live in a hypothetical world, and I know that would never exist. But the point
is, for some people it does. I think in the minds of some of my audience it does, because they're like, Kamala is shit on the Middle Eastern front. She's a warmonger and a hawk. But I think I'll have the right to an abortion. I think I'll have a right to affirmative action. I think I'll have a right to, maybe a living wage job under her versus Trump. And so for me, that is not me personally, but for that voter, that is the comparison that there's some domestic shit that we're dealing with as a trans person, as a disabled person, etc. That absolutely will be that she's on point for, or at least is respectable on. And then there's this other thing that's indefensible, but I can't ignore these things either. That's the challenge.
So don't forget, she's been in office, not the president's office, but she's been part of the administration for the past 4 years. So if there hasn't been any movement under the Democrats on these things, I don't know why people think it's going to be different the next time. At the end of the day, people have to, they vote what they think is right, but these issues are not disconnected, and there's not going to be, I don't know why people think that, taking at this point trillions of dollars out of the economy to support these imperial wars
War
don't
machine.
affect
Yeah.
things domestically. So Kamala Harris, if she's already said she's going to continue funding all of these wars and continue bolstering Ukraine and now Taiwan for a confrontation with China potentially, and Israel. Walt said it. He supports Israel expansionism. So this is going to go on. And who's footing the bill? What do you think is left for us? You really, like, none of these are disconnected. I mean, look at what's happening in North Carolina. Oh, this is under Biden. Do you think Kamala Harris has nothing to say about that? Yeah. She's making that choice. She has a voice in this decision, and she's showing you what kind of president she's going to be domestically. And if she's in office, I'm going to be happy to say I told you so, because all of these things people think she's going to be wonderful on, she's already demonstrated a pretty bad record on. And also, like, here's another thing. People, for some reason, when awful things on the domestic front are happening under the Democrats, whether it's family separation, deportations, somehow they disappear from people's minds and nobody's talking about them, even though they're happening.
Very true.
And
that's the one argument for Trump that there is a way, and Angela Davis and I talked about this last week at a public event, like, where you want to pick your enemy. And I think Kamala is someone who can be moved in a way that Trump isn't. That was her position. She said, I think Kamala is a person who at least we can wage war against. Trump, there's no room. But then there's a way that I remember being in the streets in 2004 marching, or 2002, 2003, marching against what was happening in Iraq. And we were in DC and students were out and it was just amazing to watch the kind of anti-war sentiment. And then once 2008 came and it was Obama's drones and Obama's war machine,
exactly.
Suddenly everyone was like, "Oh, it's different." It's like, no, it's not. It's literally not different.
Because it's a black. Right, exactly. And
it's a black person, it's a Democrat, it's a liberal, all this, right?
Yeah. And the reason, and it's not really because they're a Democrat or that he's black or whatever. It's because the media is playing a central role in this, the liberal media in particular, and so they sort of all these things continue to happen under the Democrats, but they disappear them from public consciousness and public imagination, and people are not mobilized. At least under Trump, you will see mass mobilization and mass participation in the political life, which I think is ultimately a good thing. I think getting which is part of what I'm talking about, like long-term outlook for this country. It's regardless of what you think of Trump, it's only going to be under him that people are mobilized for the same issues that would be happening under the Democrats, but because they're under him, people are going to go in the streets because they're going to be visible in the media. And it's always a good thing when you have popular political mobilization, because this system does everything to keep people at home, to keep them marginalized politically, to disenfranchise them, to keep them, busy trying to just make ends meet, busy trying to distract them with celebrity culture or sports culture, whatever, anything except public participation in political life. And that will happen under Trump. And domestic issues are because most Americans, it's a large portion of us who really focus and understand the relevance of foreign policy, but most Americans don't know and don't care.
They don't care.
But they do care about domestic issues. So because of that, I don't worry. There's a self-correcting mechanism for domestic issues in the United States that will be activated if those things are under threat. Now, the world, we're moving towards a fascist status, and that's been happening under for many administrations, whether they're Democrat or Republican, because frankly,
they're all right wing at this point.
Exactly, because there's a layer of people layer of elites in this country who are really pulling the strings. And there's corporate interests, there's billionaires, there's massive donors, and we do that. I mean, this country has legalized bribery that they called lobbying and whatnot. I mean, and at the end of the day, they don't listen to us unless we vote them out, unless we
Right.
protest them. And to me, that's what I can do. I have this singular vote, and I'll put that vote firmly on the foundation of my morals.
I respect that.
And
I respect that, and I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. It's just, again, I struggle because when I'm in different spaces, I'm talking to different kinds of people, and there's different needs and different urgencies that people communicate. And I want to do the most principled thing and the thing that'll help us get free. And I'm not sure that we'll ever get free playing, as you said, lesser of two evils. But there's always this moment, and this has happened my entire life, again, as a Green Party person, where everybody says, yeah, you can do that except this election because the sky is falling this election. This time, you can do it normally, but not with Bush. You can do it normally, but not with Trump, right? And there's always a boogeyman.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's a legitimate challenge. But there is a way that Trump is different.
I want to go back.
We have to run, but I'll give you the last word, please. I want you to get your last thought.
To that hypothetical that that would never exist. I think a more apt sort of hypothetical would be: would I vote for Harris if she was all the right things on Palestine, but she was also very clear that she wanted to put all Black people in bondage again, because that was a better world, because that's how intense genocide is. And my answer would be no, I would not vote for her. Because I have moral clarity on that.
Yeah.
So that's the apt analogy.
That's helpful. If we have more time, I push back on that comparison, but you should come back because I want to talk just about this election stuff and about sort of how we can think about really continuing to push this anti-war movement that we've been a part of for a very long time, and fight the corporate Democrats and find a way to deal with the immediate pressures people are feeling right here. Because the conversation we're having, when I go into Black communities, brown communities, queer communities, they're having a different conversation sometimes. And sometimes it's because, as you pointed out, we don't have the political education to see the relationship between the domestic and the international. But then sometimes I think I'm being tone deaf to some people's urgent needs. And I don't know which is which sometimes. But what I know for sure is that there's no universe where anything that the Democratic Party has done on this issue and so many other issues is defensible, or it can't be explained away, it can't be defended, it shouldn't never be endorsed. And so we got to talk through that. Anyway, Susan, I know this is an incredibly long and painful, challenging day. I'm grateful to you for spending some time with us. Also, I want to just shout out Playgrounds for Palestine, because that is such an important organization. It's such an important organization that you started, and you and a community of really committed people decided that this work needs to be done. I encourage everyone to go to the Playgrounds for Palestine website to make a donation. In fact, it's my annual donation. All the proceeds from Except for Palestine go to Playgrounds for Palestine. So I'll be sending you a check again as soon as I get it from them.
Of course, all of our resources now are going to support a school in Gaza. So we're not doing playgrounds. We're doing a school. So just FYI.